Am I just a complete goober? I had fun. It was okay. Weird. So I'll read that one to you. I think this is my favorite of the whole book that I read. Hello my friends, welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you are new here. My name is Noelle, this is Noelle 7 Pages, and the 7 is my Enneagram type. So I've decided to vlog Poetry-a-thon, or all of the books that I read for poetry in the month of April, because I just don't read a lot of poetry, and I thought this might be a good little video diary for me to unload my thoughts while I read a lot of poetry. Okay, that was the same thing in the long sentence. Let's get it together. But the thing is, like, I have read poetry, I own poetry that I have read and liked, but I don't do it very often. Like, not nearly as often as I want to. I want to be the kind of bitch that reads poetry and enjoys herself and knows what's going on. But the reality is, like, I don't know the first damn thing about what makes good poetry or bad poetry, or, I mean, I know, like, the literary poetic devices that were taught to me like in high school and middle school, but I don't know much beyond that. So this is just gonna be kind of a noob's journey to poetry this month. And this is also taken with like a big grain of salt, like multiple big grains of salt, because the stack that I have to show you is not exactly the most diverse stack of poetry in the world, but it is the entire collection of poetry that I own right now. Feels like just a good place to start. So I decided to read a bunch of poetry this month because I learned from Shelley Flowers Reads and Writes channel that April is National Poetry Month, which is awesome. And she's hosting a month-long Poetry-a-thon over on her channel. She has a really cool bingo board that she put together for it and everything. I don't think that I'm gonna use the bingo board. I am just going to try and read at least one of my poetry books each week in the month of April. So hopefully... April. So hopefully like 4 or 5 poetry books by the end of this vlog, and hopefully I'll have some new favorites. So I'll show you the 7 books of poetry that I own that are unread, give you a little bit of info on them if I know that info in the dome. Okay, so the first 2 that I'll show you are both Wordsworth. I'll probably start with this one because this is very thin and it's illustrated and like selected works of his poetry. This one is much thicker and much denser, and the font is very small. Even though the painting on the cover of this, Kindred Spirits, is like one of my favorite paintings ever since I like learned about it my freshman year of college in art history. But okay. So that aside, I've been scared of this because let me show you how like tiny the font is. Can you tell how small and dense that is? I'm scared. This one is significantly less intimidating because they're much shorter, the font is a lot bigger, and some of the pages only have a few words on them.
And there's pictures. Okay,
so that's Wordsworth. And then the next one that I have is this collection of poems and sketches from E.B. White with this really excellent, like Western-esque picture of him and his dog on the back. I miss this. Can we bring back full shameless photos of authors on the back of books? Because it's one of my favorite things that like we used to do. This I got used. It's very like kind of loved and worn, you know, but I feel like that just adds some charm. And here's the thing, I didn't know, because I'm not in the know, that E.B. White wrote like adult essays and poems and other things outside of like the books that he wrote for kids, like Charlotte's Web and Stuart Little and The Trumpet Swan. I really like his storytelling style when he writes for kids. So I picked this up because of that, realizing like, oh, silly me. It makes sense that he would write poems and essays also. Will I get to this? Maybe, maybe not. The next one that I have is a classic, The Sun and Her Flowers by Rupi Kaur. And I don't know, I bought this like every other white hoe around, but haven't read it. I also have not read and do not own Milk and Honey, because I guess I just was under a rock at the time that that one was making the rounds. Like, I could power through this so easily, and I'm excited to do so with like a cup of tea and some snacks and like a candle and a cozy blanket and just get through this in an evening. Not because I want to like sprint through it, but I just want to like soak it all in all at once in a nice
vibey package.
I really don't know much about like the context of Rupi Kaur's poetry other than it's on Instagram all over the place. So I don't know what to expect, but I'm just gonna go into it and hope that I enjoy it. The next one I've talked about a couple times on my channel recently, which is Ain't I a Woman? And this is, I'm reading it, so I have the dust jacket off right now, but this is actually an anthology of a bunch of women poets all over the world, edited by Illona Linthwaite. And so far, I'm only about 50 pages into this so far, but I've been really enjoying it. And it's really fun because all of the poems are written in like various dialects of English. Some of them are translated into English from different parts of the world. The voices of these women poets express themes of love, injustice, motherhood and loss, and the oppressions of race and sex, etc, etc. So I know that this is for sure one I will finish this month as well. It's also in my Linguathon TBR, so this will get done. I'm very excited about it. So far, this is probably my most anticipated and maybe like predicting to be my favorite of all of these for the month, but we will see. Almost there. The next one I have is Metaphysical Poetry, an anthology also. I don't know anything about this. This was such an impulse buy at like a used bookstore in my area where I said,
metaphysical poetry?
That sounds like something I could get behind. I love an anthology. I love some metaphysical woo-woo stuff in my life. I feel like the subject matter will be fun for me because my little woo-woo witchy self is gonna get a kick out of it. And the last one that I have here is, you probably won't be able to see this, but it's like a monochromatic white cover. You could kind of see it. On the front is embossed where it says, I am her tribe. And similar to Rupi Kaur, it has very short poems in it. And actually, you could see by the flags, I already read this. I read this a couple days ago, so I will talk about it in a second. But first, I owned this because the love of my life, Kaylin Nicholson on YouTube, I think read this or had this in a video like years ago, and I bought it because I would do anything for her. So let me just talk about this one, having read this already. Here's the thing. A lot of this feels like white woman feminism, toxic positivity, but a lot of this has to do with her own healing and coming to terms with the domestic abuse that she faced, the sexual abuse that she faced. There are some themes of like rape and loneliness and other like really heavy shit that she has written poetry about to process like her own healing and acceptance. And so it's really hard for me to have like a solid idea about this book because there are certain things about it that I straight up did not like, but there are other poems in here that are objectively just like so powerful and beautiful. So this I might just not rate. But yeah, I could tell that this is very like powerful and meaningful to the author on her like in her own like journey. And yet there are some things in here that like I just didn't vibe with. And also like there are a few problems that I have with this that I'm having trouble like looking past. This was probably the least intimidating. So I wanted to just like set myself up for success and read the shortest, easiest one. So this is out of the way. And I feel like next I might pick up the illustrated Wordsworth one and go from there. But yeah, this was a very long intro in my bathrobe, but you know what? That's just what you get when you come to my channel. Hi, Sunday. Hi, babies. She's chilling. She loves poetry. But okay, so I will update you next time I have thoughts on one of these poetry books, and thank you for hanging out with me. I hope this is a fun vlog, and I hope that I have a few more thoughts about poetry and my taste in poetry by the end of the month, but we will see when we get there. Okay, bye.
I don't really have very much experience, but I'll be—
Someone else!
Yay! Someone else! Someone else! Someone else!
Okay, I just have to say that I started reading The Golden Store, which is the illustrated collection of Wordsworth, and in the first like couple pages it gives you this brief timeline of Wordsworth's life, and okay, 1770, William Wordsworth is born on April 7th. That's today. Like, what are the odds of that? What are the odds that 321 years after he was born exactly, I would start reading his poetry? I don't know. I just thought you would like to know that. But yeah, so far I'm about a third into this and I'm really liking it because I didn't realize when I told you about it before that while it is like lightly illustrated, there's also like footnotes on every poem. So it'll give you like a little bit of backstory, and also like if there's any like strange words that like I might not recognize, it says like, oh, thwarting means this, unfettered means this, oh, this is funny, apocalypse means this. So it's been really great so far. Okay, I just thought you'd like to know that I started this unknowingly on his birthday, so good times, love that for me.
I love refrigerators.
Hello, I don't know when I last updated you, but I do have some very great updates finally. The other day I was live on my friend Savannah's The other day I was live on my friend Savannah's channel at Riveting Reads. We did like a reading marathon sprint for like 5 or 6 hours, and it was so fun and perfect because I finished The Golden Store in like our first sprint. I also read the entire book, The Sun and Her Flowers, and then I was able to start another book that I'm reading for Linthwaite. So it was a very productive afternoon of reading for me. And I'm excited to talk to you about these because I feel really great that I've read them, even though I don't feel profoundly moved. Let me explain. So I gave both of these 3 stars. The Golden Store, 3 stars, because I just didn't really connect with it. I know that it's like 300 years old, but I think my favorite part about this was getting the behind the scenes. Like the editor has put in some like narrative information about Wordsworth's life, and a lot of it that he lived with his sister Dorothy. And there's also excerpts from Dorothy's like journal in here, and a lot of her journal entries like connect with certain poems that Wordsworth wrote at the same time. Like that was really interesting, but the poems themselves, I just don't think that I am well versed enough in this era and in this more like classic style of poetry, even though a lot of it is like about nature and some of it is about like injustices that he sees in the world, some tragedies, family things. Like I connected with like the themes, but there was, I don't know, some kind of barrier that I kept finding, even though there's like very literal training wheels on this book as far as like the subtext of what you're supposed to get from the poems, explaining all of the words that I may not know. It's literally illustrated. So even with the training wheels, I feel like I still really didn't get from it what I was supposed to get from it, which is just me. Like I just don't know enough about poetry to feel like, ah, yes, I understand. Like I profoundly connect with William Wordsworth. There were some in here that I really enjoyed, especially Lucy Gray, because that is like one of the main characters, the main character in The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes by Suzanne Collins, which is a controversial book, but I loved it. And even in that book, Lucy Gray talks about her namesake being a poem by one of the old poets. So it was very interesting to get to read that poem and like kind of make those connections to Lucy Gray in like Suzanne Collins' universe versus like the Lucy Gray that William Wordsworth wrote about. There were some nature poems that I really liked. There were some other poems about like people with him and his sister Dorothy. We got like little snippets of their like relationship together. Overall, like it was fine. I'm glad that I read it, but yeah, like a solid 3-star. I don't know that this will really stick with me. It also is like less than 100 pages. It's like 80, 90 pages maybe, and it took me like forever to read this. So I don't know. It was like fine, you know, that's a solid 3-star. It was okay. I had fun. It was okay. And very similarly with The Sun and Her Flowers by Rupi Kaur, I did tab this. So I think I tabbed maybe 10 or a dozen out of 300 pages of poems. One in particular, I loved it so much that I sent a picture of it to my boyfriend while he was at work. So I'll read that one to you. I think this is my favorite of the whole book that I read. If I'm going to share my life with a partner, it would be foolish not to ask myself 20 years from now, is this person going to be someone I still laugh with? Or am I just distracted by their charm? Do I see us evolving into new people by the decade, or does the growing ever come to a pause? I don't want to be distracted by the looks or the money. I want to know if they pull the best or the worst out of me. Deep at the core, are our values the same? In 30 years, will we still jump into bed like we're 20? Can I picture us in old age, conquering the world like we've got young blood running in our veins? So I really liked that poem. There were a few others that I very much enjoyed or found to be powerful, but I don't think that this is going to stick with me per se. There are some trigger warnings that I didn't realize were a thing, so maybe look those up before you read this. I really did like how this is organized actually. The poem on the back is kind of walks you through how it's organized. There's 5 chapters that have to do with like the life cycle of a flower. So the first part is wilting and then falling, then rooting, then rising, then blooming. So the poems kind of loosely fall into those themes, which made it a very like organic way to read. I liked reading through the different themes as they progressed through the book. I found some of the poems to hit deeper than others. I like that she can write like long form poetry and also just like a couple lines, or sometimes just one line is all that's on the page. So it was interesting. I see how this has become so popular, how this poet has become so popular. I think I will be interested in reading like her other works of poetry, especially I know Homebody just came out not too long ago. So it's not that I didn't enjoy it, like I did like it. I just don't think that I will like really return to it or reflect on it very much. So 3 stars for this one too. And then next, as far as this vlog goes, I think I'm going to try and finish Ain't I a Woman next. I don't have the dust jacket on it, but this is the anthology collection of poems from people all over the world, particularly women for the most part. And I'm about 50 pages into this. I think I have probably 100 pages to go. I'm hoping I can get through this like either today or tomorrow maybe. I was really enjoying it because of the diversity of thought, diversity of expression, diversity of backgrounds that are represented here, which is like the point. But it really does have that potency that so far, like all 3 of the books that I've read for this vlog so far, I just don't feel like they've had that extra muscle behind them. Does that make sense? Like I Am Her Tribe really didn't do it for me. I think I told you I didn't rate it, but I decided to rate it a 1 star just because like the problems that I had with it felt 1 star worthy to me. So between a 1 star and now 2 like lukewarm 3 stars, I need to be like grabbed by this. So I think I'm gonna go after Ain't I a Woman next in the next couple days. And then I also needed to update you that I just hauled The Girl and the Goddess by Nikita Gill, which is, I think it's like a story, like one thread of story or main character, but it's told in poems. So I'm very intrigued by the idea. I talked about this in my haul that should be up by the time you see this vlog, but I'm really intrigued by the idea that there can be a whole story beginning to end told in the form of like individual poems, because I just read Clap When You Land, which is written in prose or like a verse, but for some reason I've never thought about like this kind of different storytelling. I don't think I'm explaining it very well. So I'll just read like the back to you, okay? Meet Pero, a girl with a strong will, a full heart, much to learn. Born into a family reeling from the ruptures of partition in India, we follow her as she crosses the precarious lines between childhood, teenage discovery, and realizing her adult self. In the process, Pero must confront fear, desire, and the darkest parts of herself in the search for meaning and ultimately empowerment. I think that sounds great. And I think what I mentioned in my haul also, I'm most excited for this because I anticipate there being some standout like individual poems that will shine like individually, but having that extra layer, knowing that there is this consistent thread story being told from beginning to end with all of these poems is just so cool to me. Like that just, I love that. So this is now on the TBR. For now, there's like maybe 10 more days of April. What's the date today? Yeah, 10 more days of April. So if I read these two with the rest of April, I will be fully satisfied. That will be 5 books of poetry in the month of April. My goal was 4, like one a week. So I feel like I'm on track, you know? If I can finish this in the next couple of days, have about a week to read this, perfect. Love it.
Drum roll, please.
Hello, poetry vlog. I'm updating like all my vlogs right now, so hopefully this won't get confusing for my editing brain. But I finished Ain't I a Woman a few days ago, and I'm so relieved. This was an easy 5 stars, like I think I knew it would be from the get-go, but I'm relieved because reading all of this lukewarm poetry, like not this book, the other books that you've seen in this vlog, I was starting to wonder like, okay, will I even recognize good poetry when I come across it? Or like, am I just a complete goober and not knowing the taste? Like, do I just not know? Will I not be able to appreciate? No, that was not the problem. This is great. This was so good. And some of it is written in different dialects of English, which was like really cool because I was, you know, trying to take my time, and a lot of them I was just reading like out loud to myself in my house, which was really fun. I'm not usually someone who like reads aloud, so that was kind of fun to play with that a little bit. Some of the poems have a very like specific meter or rhythm that I would discover while I was reading them out loud to myself, and I don't think I would have like picked up on otherwise. So I had a lot of fun reading this and going through this. In the table of contents, I would put like little asterisks. I don't know if you'll be able to see this, but there's some like asterisks next to the ones that I like really liked. And I would say like there's a pretty good amount, and they're also pretty well spread out like over the course of the book, because it's not like, you know, there's one chunk that I really loved and then there's long chunks where I like didn't think anyone was that great. So I felt like it was pretty balanced. For me, who knows nothing about poetry, I felt like I was able to get through this. There was some that were longer, there were some that were denser, there were some that were heavier, there were some that were lighter. It was kind of loosely organized by theme, but it wasn't ever explicitly said in the book, like, okay, now we're going to talk about like being a mother, now we're going to talk about death, now we're going to talk about sex. Like, you just kind of organically come across like, oh, well, the last few have all been about whatever common theme, and I liked that I would get to discover kind of as we went, like transitioning through different themes. It felt very smooth, for lack of a better word, really. What else was I gonna say about this? I don't know what else I was gonna say about this, but if I think of it, I will come back and let you know. But this is absolutely my favorite of the month so far. I'm very, very glad to have read this. This is going to get a special place on my bookshelf, my tiny, pitiful shelf of poetry that I will be proudly growing. I mean, some of these I now feel like I should unhaul, but this one, this is a treasure. And I'm excited, like, that now I have read it, so. Ain't I a Woman? Okay, this is kind of weird. I just went to grab the 4 that I read. Like, is this a poetry thing? Or do all poetry books just have, like, white covers? Like, look at this. Weird. Weird. But that's gonna do it for this vlog. I didn't quite get to Girl and the Goddess. It's the end of the month, and my part of me wants to like squeeze it in and push this vlog into May, but I also know, like, if you watched my May TBR, like, I just simply do not have the wiggle room to be trying to like squeeze any extras in for like vlogs that I meant to have done in April anyways. So I think I'm just gonna call it with these 4. This is a complete success. That was my goal anyways, was to read like roughly 1 book of poetry every week in April. So I'm so happy with my 4, even though like 3 of them I didn't love, 1 of them I really did love, but I feel like I'm getting more of an appreciation. Like I learned how to read poetry. I kind of learned that there are just some themes that I really just didn't gravitate to. In some, there's like a repetition of some themes across these books, and I also learned that I don't know anything, and there's so much to learn as far as like style and rhythm and classic poetry and when it's okay to break the rules, or what makes a good poet who breaks the rules versus like a bad poet who breaks the rules but it doesn't work, like all of those things. Also, over the course of the month, just because I was like in the poetry world, I've discovered 2 YouTubers, well, new to me. One is Rachel Oates and one is Uncarly, and they both do a lot of videos like about poetry or kind of like critiquing certain poetry or all of those things, and so I've been loving looking at through like all of their videos and learning from the 2 of them. I'm excited to read more down the road. This was just my kind of jump into the deep end of reading poetry for a month, and I'm happy that I can call this my participation in Poetry-a-thon, again hosted by Shelley Flowers Reads and Writes. I'm really excited. That's also a new channel that I've like, you know, recently come across, and am just learning and loving everything that they put out also. This was great. If you have any favorite poetry that you would recommend to me, let me know, because now I feel like I want to continue down this rabbit hole. I feel like I'm on a bit of a roll here, and I'm excited that I have now read most of the poetry that I own. So I'm almost there, and I'm just gonna keep going with the poetry, guys. This will not be the end of reading poetry on this channel. So if you made it to the end of this video and you'd like to leave me a comment, you can leave me the pen and paper emoji just for funsies, just to let me know that you are here and vibing with me. I'd really appreciate that. Otherwise, thank you for watching. I will see you very soon in probably another vlog or some other silliness and the antics that I get up to. So really appreciate having you here, and I will see you next time. Love you, bye!